Welcome to Energy Thanks, a podcast about the oil and gas industry's role in the energy future. I'm Tisha Schuller, your host and the CEO of Adamantine Energy. As you know, we are at a pivotal time, a time I'm calling the moment. And everywhere we look, forces are conspiring to lay bare the myth of a simple and quick energy transition. So today I have a solo episode for you. It's going to be the last one of season 8 that I'm going to take a very short break because I'm getting the book finished and published. And so I'm going to do what I usually do in these solo episodes, which is wander a bit through things I'm working through. This has become one of my favorite formats. So thanks for all your feedback. I never quite know what I'm going to say or what's going to happen. And for whatever reason, you all don't seem to mind. And I get really strong feedback and ideas from this format. So thank you. Keep co-creating with me. I'm starting with 4 ideas today to structure our time together. The first is I thought I'd reflect a little bit on what I learned from writing the book. Writing a book is a strange process. I'll tell you a little bit more about where I landed on that. Second, I thought I'd do some reflection on what companies are actually doing in this time of unprecedented volatility plus opportunity. Like, what are we saying? What are our clients doing? What are people we're advising doing? Then I got to go this week. So when you're listening to this, it will be last week to Houston for the Young Pipeline Professionals Conference. I adore this group. I love young pipeliners everywhere. And I got asked some interesting questions, that spurred some reflection that I actually promised those participants I would discuss in this podcast. So I'll do that. And then I thought I'd close out with thinking about the myth. Is the myth dead? Is the myth a zombie? What's going to happen with the myth and what's our role in that? So those are the 4 things I'm thinking about talking about today. I hope that you like what you're hearing here. And if you do, please go to energythinks.com or Substack and subscribe to my weekly newsletter. Both of these things are true. Now here's my solo pod with my special guest, myself. All right. So a few personal updates. So I graduated my youngest from high school. He's going off to college in the fall. There's a lot involved. It wasn't like that. My oldest graduated 4 years ago. It was COVID. So there are many parties that must be had, many logistics that must be managed. And so it was delightful. I wasn't as teary-eyed as all my fellow parents. There was a lot of tears. I didn't feel tears. I was like, yeah, I did my job. This boy's going to college. So I feel really good about that. Really psyched to have my oldest came. So we had like the whole family together. And I just loved that family time. So I guess I'm patting myself on the back right now for that. The second big personal update I have for you is that you may not know that I've been working and recording these podcasts in my oldest child's bedroom for the last 6 months because my standalone office on my property was getting remodeled. And it turned out, as my contractor said, it was originally framed by 3 blind monkeys. So they had to go down to the studs and it was a lot of work. But I don't know if you can hear the echo. I'm in here now. It's friggin' beautiful. And I don't have any furniture because tariffs. No, not really. I just don't have time to sort out what furniture I want in here. So it's a little echoey, but it's spring. So I live up in the mountains of Colorado. The window's open because I'm on a podcast microphone. You probably can't hear it, but the creek is roaring. The birds are losing their minds. And I am just so happy to be in my own standalone structure. It's really nice. And, I don't know if I've told you all this, but I live in the dark side of a canyon. So spring is like a miracle every year. And so while the rest of you are contemplating summer, I'm just really enjoying the fact that the snow finally melted in my yard and sunshine hits my face in my own yard. So that's pretty wonderful. And then the last little personal update is it's running season. My husband and I do a half together at the end in September, a mountain half. And it's kind of this arduous process every year because I don't run all winter because I'm a fair weather running girl. So, you start at 4 miles and then I try to add a mile a week. But let's just say I haven't succeeded at that endeavor yet. But this morning, my husband and I did 6 miles. So that felt good. 8's kind of the hurdle you have to get over, the 8-mile mark, but 6 is respectable. 6 is a respectable distance. So I did that. And then my husband, I don't know what got into him, but he offered me a cup of coffee. So I'm drinking my 3rd cup of coffee for the day. So you're welcome. So that's what's happening in my life. Okay. So I thought I would reflect with you all a little bit about what I learned while writing the book. There's a lot. It's really weird to be a scientist and someone who tries to like analyze things and provide advice. But writing is really creative, and you have to kind of go into this swirl where you get lost. And especially because I was writing the book expecting a continuation of existing politics, but then we got the Trump administration and its very volatile situation, and I had to scrap the whole thing and start over. So in about early February. So, but it's so cool because when it sorts out, you sort of feel like, yes, I know what I'm here to say. And I can't wait to share it with you all. You're going to see the book coming out in August, September. You've seen a lot of the material. I've been testing the ideas in my Both of These Things Are True email, but probably that there's 2 things that came out in the edit process and the editing that surprised me. It's so cool. It's so weird to surprise yourself when you're writing, but that's the whole point. I guess you're working through ideas. And a lot of you actually will chime in or workshop this stuff with me. So thank you for that. So the first thing that was really interesting is, so the whole book is called The Myth in the Moment. It's set up on the premise, the same premise as this podcast, that the myth of an easy energy transition, it's becoming clear that it is in fact a myth. And I really thought the myth was dead. Like it has a golden, I don't know, what kind of steak do you put in somebody's heart? I don't know. It has a necklace of garlic and it's dead. Whatever steak you put in the heart of a myth. I'm mixing my metaphors. Okay. So what has been clear to me watching politics, and in particular Democratic politics, and where kind of the NGOs that I get to do a lot of engagement with, even the center left NGOs, like where are they going? It became clear to me that there could be a reaction on the left to the Trump administration that essentially, instead of recognizing the myth of an easy energy transition, instead blames the Trump administration for the slowdown on climate action. And so you can see how this could play out pretty easily, right? Like we, the Greens, when we were in charge, we got the banks involved, we got the industrial companies in charge, even the oil and gas companies were on board. Like when we were in charge, we were going to make progress on climate. But then the Republicans came to be in charge and all our progress was stopped. And you can imagine in this, how this plays out is that those groups go back as soon as they have a Democratic administration, or maybe even just a Democratic House or Senate. You can imagine a world where they just go back to the myth of an easy energy transition playbook. And not only do they go back, but now you, me, the oil and gas industry, like we're to blame. We're the ones that slow down progress. And in fact, more than ever, get off fossil fuels, anti-oil and gas, that kind of thing. So as I've been game planning this out in my head, I've been thinking, oh man, we need to make sure that doesn't happen. So how does that not happen? And that leads me to my second insight that came out of writing the book, which is that the future is not yet written. I had been thinking that this was a very linear trajectory we were on. Decarbonization is broadly inevitable because of just innovation and we want things cleaner, better, smaller footprint. I thought that. And second, I thought, well, it's becoming clear to everyone that climate action, decarbonization is hard. It's harder than we thought. And we should, have more conversations about the 3 T's of energy realism: time frame, truth, and trade-offs. I thought that was just, both those things were broadly inevitable. I don't think that anymore. I think actually, if you had to pick a most likely outcome, it would be that at some point, pick your time frame, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 years, at some point, there's a Democratic trifecta, and the default energy position is a climate position. And I think we should rally ourselves and gird our loins and whatever messy mixed metaphors I can come up with on my third cup of coffee to make sure that never happens. And that's going to require a kind of engagement and leadership that prioritizes reaching out to center left stakeholders, forging partnership with climate activists, climate hawks, ensuring that academics, think tanks, that this myth of an easy energy transition doesn't get written off as a political side effect of politics. So that came out of the book. I think you'll see my suggestions, my very concrete suggestions when you get the book. But if you have one takeaway for today, I would love for you to reflect upon and opine a little bit with me about what are the things that we as the oil and gas industry should be doing today to ensure that the energy system continues to evolve in innovative and decarbonizing and ever better, cleaner, faster, cheaper ways with our climate hawk partners so that they're not so far left out in the cold that the only viable option they see is to hate our guts. That just seems dumb and wildly counterproductive. So yeah, I'm interested in what you think about that. I'm also interested, I just love, of course, I'm obsessed with agency. I just think we all should wake up every day and say, what can I do to make the world better? What am I doing to make the world better? And the idea that things aren't written, that we will write them, that just gets me going. So I'm pretty excited about that. Okay, that was one, what I learned writing the book. Second, what do I see that companies are doing? So I get to co-host the Real Decarbonization Consortium, a bunch of company leaders with my colleague, Naomi Bones at Stanford. And we got that group together. And man, I always find them inspiring. And so that plus the conversations I get to have traveling about and working with various companies has given me a front row seat to how companies are navigating this political environment. So just broadly, if you're doing this, but also what is interesting is every company, every leader is kind of trying to sort this out by themselves. And so let me try to crowdsource a little information for you here. One is there is unprecedented volatility, right? Like the Trump administration is just a nonstop source of what now? If you're trying to make a business plan, whether you're a small business like mine or a big business like many of yours. And of course, as always, in volatility, in uncertainty, there is just wild opportunity. And the way I now am translating this in my own life and leadership is to think about how, in fact, do we have that agency right now? Like, how can we clearly narrate things that need to get done in the chaos? In the energy sector, that's just actually kind of freaking easy right now. There's just growing demand. There's a recognition of the myth in the moment out in the world when, New York, the state of New York isn't outright rejecting the idea of gas-fired generation and gas pipelines and data centers. That the moment is happening. And so what I'm seeing is that most executive teams and executives, the default setting is reaction to what's happening now. And smart executives and smart executive teams are taking the time with a just relentless discipline to think about what's going to come next. And the time horizons vary based on the organization, right? Is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? Is it 4, 6, 8, 10? What's the time horizon appropriate for your organization and your decision? But taking that time to just explicitly state what's happening today is not permanent. It is impermanent. And we need to make sure that our actions are durable. And just like a very concrete example is many companies are getting opportunities to get expedited permits. And those companies are having big conversations about what happens under future political regimes to these permits. And are you actually building a defensible record, both for the legal system and the court of public opinion, to show fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders? So that's just a very concrete example of take the opportunity for the win, but put it through the lens of this longer time horizon. So the other piece that is less obvious, but that I'm happy to remind all of you, is that there will be a time when whatever the new version of wokeness is back in charge. And when that happens, what will your company have done in these arenas that will have different names, but it will still be diversity, equity, inclusion in some form. It will still be, maybe nonpartisan or bipartisan political positioning. And then whether it's climate or innovation or decarbonization or carbon intensity, how will you narrate your consistency when those things are back in fashion? So we've seen those things come and go enough that you can be certain that they will come back. And in particular, companies are very quietly maintaining their diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. But I do think there's going to have to be some more clear narration of what that looked like and how it was done well. So that's something I think to think about. The last thing that I see companies doing really well, it's pretty awesome, is that blue states are kind of weird right now because Democrats of all stripes have to decide if they are essentially rallying as the resistance to Trump, right, to something more progressive, super lefty, or if there's some kind of center left alternative, right, some kind of moderate Democrats. And what you see really is they're trying to do both. Like we are the moderate resistance. Okay, this is all opportunity for us because we've been trying to figure out how to get stuff built in blue states. And what I'm seeing is effective is we need to give blue state leaders an out. We need to give them an exit ramp, right? They went whole hog in on a easy energy transition, net zero by pick your number, no more oil and gas production, et cetera, et cetera. And now they're looking at a world going, oh my goodness, data centers, growing electricity demand, can't build anything, we're a victim of our own like successful NIMBY politics. So let's go ahead and just say that things are changing, right? That we now know things we didn't know. There are new demands on the energy system. Let's give them an exit and allow them to embrace a kind of pragmatic climate policy. And I see a lot of companies doing that. Not, of course, as you know, saying, I told you so, educating them about why they need oil and gas. These things don't work. They just inflame the polarized politics. But thinking about the exit ramp is and helping blue states navigate that, letting them with dignity chart a new pragmatic path. This is how we're going to be successful. And it also feeds back into that agency of the first part. We can inform what comes next by creating our own pragmatic path that has room for Democrats and lefties. Okay. So let's talk about the third thing, which is I got to go to Young Pipeliners. I was the moderator for the morning keynote with Cynthia from Enbridge. She's wonderful and very articulate. And at the very end, we had a question from a gal from Williams. So shout out and feel free to tag yourself in my posts because I didn't get to find you and get your name. I want to give you credit for the question. But essentially, this person said, they really understand, young pipeliners, that they are ambassadors for our industry, that their peer group is looking to them to understand why it's okay or desirable to work in the oil and gas industry, to work in a pipeline business. And they explicitly, they're at these meetings to enhance their ambassador skills. So essentially she said, now that pipelines and natural gas are being associated with this huge need for data centers, and for the most part, if you're in the public, no one's against data centers. Everyone wants more access to these resources as long as it's, paired with reliable, affordable power. And she was asking, what does this change about our mission as ambassadors? And I think that's such a great question. And I don't really know the answer other than how I've been thinking about it, which is the ways in which this creates a moment, an opportunity for us. To the extent, for one, tech companies will narrate the reality of the energy system complexity, that is super useful to us. Now, will they have the courage to do that? Will they walk back their commitments on net zero or 24/7 carbon-free power, those kind of things? I don't know, but to the extent they will be very credible narrators of the 3 T's of energy realism, right? Time frame, trade-offs, telling the truth. And so to the extent that we can pair ourselves with these groups and help them narrate a positive story around building out energy infrastructure, the need for pipelines, the upside of natural gas over, say, keeping coal-fired power plants on or even building coal-fired power plants, the potential for natural gas plus CCS. I think there's a real opportunity for us to team up as climate-centric partners with data centers. And I think maybe the risk of all of this would be, and I think it's a very realistic risk, is just this gets a little Wild Westy, right? And you start seeing the kind of public backlash to it that you saw to wind development, that there's just this build, baby, build, which I'm all for. But if you do it recklessly and communities, both conservative and liberal, start rejecting the idea of data centers and their associated infrastructure, the power generation, the pipelines required to be there. And if we do this in a decarbonizing framework, then we're going to need CCS pipelines. We're going to need CCS locations. This is going to have to be done well and right and in partnership with a lot of communities who want to see this stuff happen. Again, back to that theme, we have agency, right? In how this all plays out. But the idea of working explicitly with tech companies to tell the story of energy systems in new ways and then build this energy future in responsible ways, this is, I think, a generational opportunity. That's one of the many reasons we have the moment happening right now. Okay. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is, what can you take away from all of this? And I started with this idea of what I learned from writing. So I am thinking a lot about what should we as an industry be doing today to prevent the resurgence of the myth. And so what do I mean by that? This would be environmental organizations saying, the energy transition would already be here if we only had the political will. The energy transition would only be here, but for, and then name your bad actor, Republicans, oil and gas companies, maybe big tech, right? Whatever, the villain. And so therefore we just need to go back to this, net zero by tomorrow, no more oil and gas politics. So how can we avoid that? Here are a few things I think we should each be working on. Curating absolute relationships with NGOs, with think tanks, with academics, anybody willing to engage and talk right now, I think we should be talking to and see if we can actually co-create this middle ground. we are perceived as the winners right now. I can't overstate that enough. And so we're going to have to figure out how to give some ground at a time that we don't have to give ground. And so that's going to be important. So I'm thinking a lot about that. And then the second thing would be, if we are successful building a lot of things right now, and I see a lot of activity, right? But will that translate to permits? Will that translate to investment decisions? Will that translate to steel in the ground? We need to build these projects in a way that will be considered credible under future liberal regimes, right? So community buy-in, appropriate environmental permits, appropriate studies, et cetera. What's appropriate? What's going to be legally defensible? I mean, we do need to find a middle ground. I think we can all agree things got too impossible and nutty. But having an eye to writing that story that you will have to tell in 5 years, I think is going to be really important. So that's it. That's what I have for you today. All right, so that's our episode for today. And that's the last episode for season 8. You've been listening to Energy Thinks. I'd like to thank you, my listeners, for your engagement and all the ideas and interviews that shaped my upcoming book, The Myth and the Moment. I hope you'll take a moment and give Energy Thinks a 5-star rating wherever you listen to your podcast. It helps other people in the energy industry find us. Go check out our website, energythinks.com, if you want to learn more about what we do at Adamantine. While you're there, you can sign up for my weekly newsletter. Both of these things are true. I'd like to thank my colleague Kayla Chieves for making the Energy Thinks podcast possible. Until next time, I'm Tisha Schuller, wishing you and yours happiness, prosperity, and good health.